person or public body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal a decision of the City of Kitchener to the LPAT, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So I want to note today that we have another emergent issue that is scheduled to begin at 4:30, and that meeting has several delegations, and so we're going to do our best to expedite our hour today and see where we land at 4:30. And it is for that reason that we're going to have just a 1 minute or so presentation to start us off from staff, from Mr. Brandon Sloan, Ms. Sarah Coutu, and Mr. Richard Kelly-Roots. All right, so I'm going to leave it to Brandon to begin.
So thank you and good afternoon. We'll do our full presentation this evening. Sarah and Richard are a huge help in getting this bylaw to this point. The new zoning bylaw we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years. Zoning is an important planning tool that establishes the permitted land uses for a property and the boundaries, the amount of development that could happen on a property. It must conform with our official plan. We have a new official plan that's more fully in effect, and it works hand in hand with our urban design manual that sets out guidelines and expectations for new development. We've been at this for many years. We've gone through a public process, including a previous statutory public meeting in April and May of last year. The process has involved a lot of work, a lot of effort from numerous staff. They're not all here today, but a lot has gone into the background of what you have before you. What's before you are new base zones. It's a new framework for a zoning bylaw that we can then add to. It includes our new employment zones, institutional zones, commercial zones, urban growth center zones, and several other ones, but it does not include our residential zones. Those will be coming in what we call Stage 2. It does include about 3,500 properties. So we are bringing the new bylaw, the framework, the text of the new zones. We're applying it to some properties in the city today, and we're undertaking different processes in each neighborhood throughout the next, into this fall and into next year. It does give us some advantages. We do have a made in Kitchener approach. There is emphasis on certain items, including more people, more about cycling. There are some positives for the environment and for our business community. There are a number of changes to the existing bylaw. There are a lot of efficiencies that we have. It is a bit more focused than our previous bylaw that was started over 30 years ago. We've done a lot of engagement. A lot of comments have been received, and we have responded to and dealt with numerous issues. This is a summary of the statutory public meeting issues. Staff have done an amazing job at resolving and refining, and we're down to a few issues that may be differences of opinion before us today, or what we're finding is some brand new issues are emerging as of even today. So to finish, we're looking for the approval of the new bylaw. There is a companion official plan amendment that goes with it because they have to connect. We will be working on the next steps of the residential zone and applying them in some of our central neighborhoods and the residential zones thereafter. So staff are here for any questions or answer, or we can listen to the delegations and respond after that as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sloan. So I think what we're going to do is, if I may ask our committee to keep in mind our time crunch, and so we're going to ask the delegates to come forward and ask them any clarifying questions, and then if staff can take note of all of the questions that are going to be relevant for them to answer, and if they can please provide us with responses about each issue at the end, unless it's absolutely critical to jump in midway, okay? Let's try it that way. So we're going to start with our first delegation from Mr. Paul Britton. Welcome. You will have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Chair Marsh, Council, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Britton of MHBC Planning. And what I would say today is staff should be congratulated. It's truly a monumental occasion today. Last bylaw, which I had the good fortune to participate in, as Mr. Sloan noted, was over 30 years ago. We participated in the process on behalf of many clients with significant land holdings, existing development, and development potential throughout the city of Kitchener. And I'm pleased to say that although not everything was received through the process, our clients are delighted with the outcome. And they've asked that I confirm their support for the staff recommendations and to ensure that I bring along some congratulations, but also some sincere thanks, and in particular to Sarah, Brandon, Elaine, Tina, and Mr. Tansley. As Council is aware, there were some appeals to the city's official plan, and the successful resolution of those appeals has resulted in the successful resolution of many of our clients' issues. And with that, I will conclude my remarks. I will leave with the clerk a list of our clients and their properties, but what you'll end up with is a modernized bylaw that is much easier and user-friendly. So I thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some questions for you, Mr. Britton. So we'll start with Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, just a quick question. You're speaking on behalf of all of the comments that came in from MHBC Planning?
Yes.
Including the ones that came in today?
Yes, I understand there was one comment that came in today that will otherwise be resolved through a general provision.
Okay, because we just got these, like we got a whole package of things that didn't come in before Friday deadline. Yes. And there's at least 2 in here from MHBC. So I just wanted to make sure that you were speaking on behalf of all of them, including these that we just received. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have Ms. Michelle DeRosier. And some guests. All right, thank you. You have 5 minutes to bring your presentation.
Thank you. I'm here today regarding our properties at 491, 525, and 563 Highland Road West. We're here basically to address 2 main issues. We are requesting that all 3 of our properties have the same zoning, and we are also requesting less regulations in the COM2 zoning as it relates to adding residential. So we've just brought an overhead here just to familiarize you with our properties at the corner of Highland and Westmount. So staff is recommending that our properties 525 and 563 be redesignated as commercial in the official plan and zone COM2. We have always been a proponent of mixed use. However, we've determined that the multiple regulations and rules associated with mixed do not fit with our short and long-term objectives for our property. We have therefore accepted staff's recommendations regarding these 2 properties. The problem that we're having, though, is that they are also recommending our smallest property, 491, which is this one on the corner, right at the corner of Highland and Westmount, remain mixed use. We've always taken the position that our properties operate as a single shopping center. In fact, we market them as the shops at Highland and Westmount, and that they should all have the same zoning. Given the size and shape of this property is approximately 0.7 of an acre, and it's kind of, I guess it's an old German tract, it's a strange shape, we think it's going to be impossible to meet the zoning regulations in the mixed zone. We currently have approximately 8,900 square feet there with 3 tenants, and to achieve the minimum FSR under mixed zoning, which is 0.6, we would require approximately 20,000 square feet, approximately 2 times what you see in the overhead. We estimate applying the minimum building height, which under mix would be 3 stories, would require a building 4 times the scale of what we have there. So we're concerned about that as well. There is also a requirement for a minimum of 20% residential and a minimum of 20% non-residential. In addition, should we want to do any development on this property, all of the parking needs to go behind the building or in a structured form, which basically means we'd be ripping down this building and pushing it forward. Even if we can figure out how to get the buildings and all of the uses required on the site, where do we put the parking and where do we put the density? Anyone who's tried to visit our Scotiabank on payday will tell you this is a very small and tight property. After more than 5 years of participation in this process, we cannot accept a zoning on this property that can likely never be achieved. Staff have a number of reasons for wanting to keep the zoning mixed, but we would respectfully point out that there are a number of other similar cases, corner properties similar to ours, where they have also had to make exceptions and permit commercial zoning. Our second issue is regarding, we're therefore requesting that 491 be designated commercial in the official plan and COM2 in the zoning to match our other 2 properties. Our second issue speaks to our need for commercial shopping centers to remain flexible to major changes. Think of things like what happened with Sears and Target. The increasing number of box stores offering everything the smaller neighborhood shopping centers are also offering, and of course online shopping. Faced with a large vacancy, the ability to add residential to a plaza may be the only thing that saves that neighborhood plaza. Not only can residential fill a vacancy, it brings customers to the property to sustain the remaining tenants. Under the COM2 zoning, the only way to add residential is in the form of a mixed-use building, and the regulations require having no residential units on the ground floor. In other words, we must have commercial or other uses on the ground floor, which in this scenario would be the very thing we are trying to replace. We are asking Planning Committee to modify the COM2 regulations to allow residential units and residential amenities on the ground floor. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Brandon and to Sarah for continuing to work with us to resolve these issues.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions for you. Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Rossier, for coming in today and for talking to us about what your issues are. And they are very site-specific, so I agree with you, and thank you for meeting with me as well. My question actually is for Brandon, and I'm so sorry, Brandon, I can't remember your last name. I apologize. Is there a way for anyone to be able to that has that's questioning what they've been assigned in terms of their zoning right now, to be able to kind of pull that out and have some time to have a conversation and see if there's something that we can do about that for them?
Mr. Sloan?
Through the chair, I think in this particular instance, we've had a number of conversations over the last many years with the delegate, and we've received the request, and staff are prepared to respond to it at the end if that's as we directed. So we do have some response to this delegation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there are no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Mr. Chris Pidgeon from GSP Group. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was standing with Michelle DeRosier. We were representing Michelle as well. I was just there for backup. I thought she did a terrific job. So I'm now here to speak on behalf of Lot 42, which is the Global Flex campus. Patrick Doyle is here. Patrick is an owner with the Doyle Investment Corporation, and if I can answer questions, then he will be able to. So this has a bit of a history. In 2017, we received confirmation from city planning staff that the Global Flex campus is a permitted use as a private club under the existing M4 heavy industrial zoning classification. Went on in 2017 where We had a site plan that was registered, so the site plan agreement registered on the subject property, and then received Ontario Building Code compliance for a place of assembly. So the Global Flex Campus, of course, has hosted many events over the last few years, including the Miss Oktoberfest Gala and Ball, a number of trade shows, concert events, and the True North Tech conference that was held last year, and I believe is confirmed to repeat in June of this year, with over 2,500 participants. So the city staff response has been not to recognize the permitted use, but rather to have it go to a legal non-conforming use. Patrick has over $7 million invested in this property in the last few years. A legal non-conforming use is not a satisfactory response for that existing use that's on the ground. If he were to require financing, for example, for modifications or renovations to the space or improvements to the space, it's difficult to secure financing with a legal non-conforming use. So we're looking for a site-specific zoning permissions that would recognize in the new zoning bylaw conference, convention, and exhibition space, as well as offices and commercial entertainment uses that are in the new zoning bylaw in Crosby, to recognize those as existing uses site-specifically. Anything further that you'd like to add? That's our submission. The legal non-conforming is just not an appropriate zoning classification for this site.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions for you at this time, but we'll be just continuing to discuss it after. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you have a different delegation, Mr. Pigeon, about something else?
I have two others, yes.
Okay, so I wonder what we should do about that, because what I might do is just ask you to, I'll ask you to just present those right now while you're here, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay, so the second is with regard to 353 Manitou Drive. So this is Great Canadian Vacations and Coaches. So this property is has 6 businesses under the overall umbrella company of Great Canadian Vacations and Coaches, and they operate a touring company recognized as a transportation terminal in the zoning bylaw. So it's a little bit different than a transportation terminal where they would have leasing and servicing and providing transportation services of goods. Rather, of course, it's people through their vacation program that they offer. And we had written to city staff in earlier versions of the Crosby asking for clarification whether a transportation terminal covered the principal use that they have at Great Canadian. I don't believe we received a response. I'm here this afternoon. More particularly, there are 2 other uses that were permitted under the previous or the in-force zoning that applies. One is sale, rental, service, storage, and repair of motor vehicles and major recreational equipment. And the second is vehicle washing and detailing, so a car wash is permitted use. So Great Canadian services Go buses, for example, Go coaches, and they do a number of services as well in the sale and rental of other coaches, not just the Great Canadian coaches that we see. And of course they do, as a part of their servicing, they do washing and detailing of those coaches as well. They also have a partnership with Gacho Motors. They've been there for several years at the front of their property where they sell motor vehicles, and they're looking for those uses to be recognized site-specifically on this site. The city staff have indicated that comprehensive review of a zoning bylaw results as a byproduct with legal non-conforming uses. But if you read their official plan, the City of Kitchener official plan indicates that legal non-conforming uses are anticipated to transition or cease. So the automotive sales or the vehicle washing and detailing is anticipated to cease according to the official plan. So that's 1/3 of the business entities that Great Canadian Vacations operates under, and having legal non-conforming uses is not an appropriate response, in their opinion, again, for the same reason I mentioned under Lot 42, so obtaining financing, for example, for improvements to their operations is difficult to secure. So they're opposed to legal nonconforming status under the Crosby and would like these two uses identified as permitted uses, site-specifically.
Okay, thank you. And did you say that address was 353 Manitou Drive?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Chair.
All right. I don't see any questions regarding that particular one. There may be later. And what's your last address?
And so, Chair Marsh, so the last one is a broader one, and it's Schlegel Urban Development Corporation. Vaughn Bender's here as well, so we'd like to appear as a dual delegation.
Okay.
Want me to proceed? Yeah. Okay. So we reviewed 15 properties on behalf of Schlegel's. We've been following this 4 or 5 year process of Crosby throughout the duration of the process. We received the final 400-page document, as committee members did, just under 10 business days ago. We've been trying to get through it as quickly as we can. And it's difficult because there's a lot of cross-referencing with the enforced zoning bylaw, so 85.1, permissions and regulations that may or may not apply in the new Crosby, as well as looking at the 3 previous drafts of Crosby and the comments that we've provided. So notwithstanding that we haven't gotten through it all and we reserve the right to bring further items forward, there are 4, I'll call them general issues that we'd like to address. So the first is with regard to parking, and I'll give, for committee and council members, I'll give you an example. So in the Williamsburg Town Centre, Vaughan has approval for building number 700, which is their new corporate office building, and they would meet the parking requirements under the in-force zoning, so not Crosby, but the in-force zoning. But there's a maximum parking provisions that are coming forward in Crosby. They have one more building to build in the town centre, building number 800. With the maximum parking provisions that are coming forward, there would be no parking that would be allowed to be built to accommodate that future building. That's a problem for them because, of course, it's impossible to tenant a building if you don't have parking. So we've got maximum parking provisions that generally are a problem. Secondly, Vaughan retained Dillon Consulting, who did a fairly extensive analysis of existing built commercial spaces, but also looked at electrical vehicle parking. And I didn't realize this, and perhaps committee members don't know this either, but there are 4 types of electrical vehicle charging stations. Some are relatively low voltage at 110 volts, 220, and then there are supercharged electrical stations. We just think that staff should take a little bit more time and analyze the appropriateness of those parking stations, where they would be located. What we're seeing is they take up the primary parking spaces, typically in commercial locations. Does it make sense, for example, to have a electric vehicle parking station at a convenience commercial? No one's going to plug it in. More likely they're going to plug in at a residential space, perhaps not even at a grocery store. So we need to look at these things carefully before they get imposed as regulations across the city. Thirdly, there's some clarification that we've requested or will be requesting with regard to the deferred urban area in the south end of Kitchener with regard to the agricultural zone that's been applied. And we are concerned about the mixed-use zone being overly prescriptive. It will apply to 5 of the Schlegel properties. Rosenberg is going to undertake a comprehensive review of that zoning bylaw, but we expect it will align closely with Crosby, and we think there are many regulations that would be more appropriately put into the urban design guideline that we are also reviewing and anticipated it's to come back to council in the fall. So, number of issues. We anticipate before committee and council is making a decision, we'll make a letter submission to you.
Sorry, you said 4, and I may have missed something. I thought I only heard 3.
I said briefly there was some clarification in the urban area deferral. That was number 3.
That's number 3, and then the mixed use is too prescriptive is number 4.
Mixed use zones.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I don't see any at this moment, so, yeah. Mr. Bender?
No, I don't want to take a lot of additional time. I'll just add we've been participating in this process with the urban design guideline process as well. We understand that the design standards for the urban design guidelines aren't available yet. To us, it seems that there's quite a bit of connectivity between urban design guidelines and the zoning bylaw with the shared objective of building great communities, great commercial spaces, which we want to fully participate in. So we understand it's a very complex issues to grapple with and update when it's been 15 years or so since it's been updated. So there has been some positive adjustments that have been made with respect to our Williamsburg Town Centre site to keep the commercial zoning in place, and we appreciate that. We did have a good meeting in February with Brandon and the team.
Okay.
We could just use a little bit more time to refine some of the outstanding issues that Chris mentioned.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. John Doherty and Mr. Jonathan Minnis. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
John Doherty won't be with me, just me today. I'm here on behalf, it's Jonathan Minnis. I'm here from Gowling WLG. I'm a lawyer there, and I'm on behalf of 4 clients. So an 832 Duke Developments, Inc., an 818 Duke Developments, Inc., the Kitchener-Waterloo YWCA, and the St. Peter's Evangelical Church. So that first property is 32 Duke Street, 2 to 22 Duke Street, 84 Frederick, and 49 Queen. And we sent in letters for each and supplementary letters for each, in case you've got one, have those in front of you for reference. And we'd be relying on the more detailed submissions in those letters. I'll give you more of an overview today. So these properties are all located in the same block, bound by Queen Street, Weber Street, Frederick, and Duke. They're all currently zoned, Office District Zone D4. They have a proposed zoning of UGC1 under Crosby, and currently 32 Duke Street has a 39-story tower under construction with an FSR 15.12. Otherwise, the other properties are in their current use. So the concern raised by our clients generally is the potential to downzone their properties in this block. More specifically, 32 Duke Street, there'd be an issue with the Planning Act under 34.9, as they've got a building permit issued for it. And as mentioned by other participants, the legal nonconforming status can cause a lot of issues for developers and is contrary to the Planning Act, so they take specific issue with that. Generally, this downzoning, we would say, is contrary to the existing built form. So other developments such as 1 Victoria, 100 Victoria, City Center, Arrow Lofts, Charlie West, these are all developments that would have been possible with the new zoning. And the new zoning effectively caps FSR at 3 with bonusing to 8. And just by way of an example, the 32 Duke Street tower will have an FSR of 15.12, so that's nearly double, even with bonusing, what you could get. So that's a concern raised by them. Then generally there's concerns about downzoning the whole block, and generally the downtown core where you'd want to have most of your density located. So there's also concerns given the fact that we do have LRT lines that are coming in eventually, and the question is raised, why would you downzone just in time for the transit to show up in this specific area of town? It's also proximate to Kitchener Bus Terminal, CN Rail Station. Generally, we take the position that the proposed UGC zoning is not consistent with the PPS, fails to conform or conflicts with the growth plan, fails to conform or conflicts with the regional Waterloo official plan, and fails to conform or conflicts with the city official plan. That's further detailed in our letters. I won't go into a lot of detail there. Other concerns raised with the proposed downzoning is it sends the wrong message to developers in the area. It'll put at risk a lot of development and investment that's already been done. And we note that with respect to the specific 32 Duke Street development, the city's development manager, Brian Bennett, has suggested in a Record article that this is what the city is looking for: more people having ownership downtown, living downtown, using the amenities downtown, which we believe will create a more retail opportunities, as well as the hospitality side. So all of our clients are looking for site-specific zoning to reflect what they have now, and reiterating the concerns that with all this infrastructure and development going in there and investment, they don't understand why the city's kind of switching gears with respect to development and downzoning the whole area. I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Have you or your clients already been, did you mention earlier that you've been in discussion for the last 5 years during this process, or no?
So we've got a client who has an approved development, so the city already found that that was good planning, and there's a conditional building permit for it. So it's our understanding that it's been approved, it's been found to be good planning, so they don't really understand why they would then downzone a property that's clearly already been approved for nearly double the FSR that's going to be put there.
Okay, sorry. No, what I'm asking you is, regarding these concerns around downzoning, have other than the 32 Duke, or this other one, I don't know if that's the same one you're referring to. I'm just curious if during the process of this last 5 years, if these property owners or their representatives have been in touch in discussions with the city or not.
So I'm not fully aware of the history before we were retained, but I can tell you within the time period, my understanding is that this was a surprise to them that this was happening and that they were being restricted in terms of their development capacity in this area.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now. Thank you. Okay, and from what I understand, we have just one more delegation, and that's Mr. Michael Mascheli. Can you help me? Can you help me? How do you pronounce your name?
Mascheli.
Mascheli. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair Marsh and committee members. My name is Heather Price with GSP Group. We have authored and submitted a letter to you with respect to the proposed zoning of 83 Elmsdale Drive. And I just wanted to give a little bit of context for this site, a little bit of history, as it has been ongoing for some time. The property was formerly a municipal works yard that has been acquired by Novacor, our clients. That was dating back to 2013. And over time, there have been a number of planning approvals processes in motion, including an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment that was approved in 2014. And at that time, there was tailored zoning for what the vision is for the site, which is a mix of uses overall. That includes residential. One of those tailored provisions is a holding provision that pertains to doing additional noise study at the time that the sensitive land uses are proposed. So we are now at the point where development is advancing, and we are in the depths of the detailed noise assessment for potential residential land uses. And it's very timely that at this time we're also looking at updating the zoning bylaw. So we have reviewed it, and we are generally accepting of the mixed zoning that's proposed for the site. And there's also a site-specific provision that essentially carries forward the permissions that we had previously through the owner-initiated amendment. However, we are requesting at this time consideration of some tweaking or some additional clarity to the holding provision that pertains to the noise study requirement. But essentially, we're asking for flexibility to either use Class 1 standard or Class 4 standard as set out by the province in NPC 300. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Michael, as he is a noise consultant and can speak to what the difference between Class 4 and Class 1 is.
Thanks, Heather. A Class 1 site is classified by the Ministry of the Environment as an area of urban noise, and the Class 2 area would be a mix between a Class 3 area, which is like Muskoka, a rural area, and this site, because it's Class 1, has a noise limit of 45 decibels during the night and 50 during the day. Now, In 2013, the Ministry of the Environment, with the Red Path Sugar case, enabled a new class called Class 4, which is a tool used by land use planning authorities and the Ministry to enable land use compatibility between industrial commercial areas and nearby residential areas. And essentially, the Class 4 designation allows for higher noise limit by 10 decibels. So instead of 45 at night, it'd be 55. And for this Class 4 to be implemented, it has to be a tri-party agreement between the developer, the industry or commercial area, and the land use planning authority. What this allows is for better compatibility because the noise limits are higher. You can build closer to the industrial area. And instead of mitigating the industrial noise sources, you allow warning clauses to be built into the sale of the homes and receptor-based noise controls like noise buffer windows, right? And now in this case, it's a very site-specific area in which the grading near the GRT facility is extremely low compared to the high grading near the 83 Elmsdale lot. So typical, noise barrier walls or site configuration is not going to be as useful in this situation. And so we are proposing this Class 4 designation. It's been adopted in many other municipalities since 2013. We feel that it would be justifiable and show land use compatibility in this case.
Okay.
If I might, just with the last minute, further to our submission of last week, we've had some further dialogue with staff, including staff at the Region of Waterloo, who are really the authority that would sign off on that holding provision to determine whether the noise levels are acceptable. And really the call on whether a Class 4 or a Class 1 could be workable here is at that regional level. And essentially they've said that they're open to a further dialogue on this matter, pending further investigation, including more data that they can provide to us based on the noise levels at the noise source, which in this case, for everyone's benefit, is the GRT facility next door. So they happen to have that data in-house and are willing to provide it. So at this point, I think we would be willing to accept a deferral of this matter to allow for further discussion to occur with the region. Should council be amenable to that.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, so that was going to be my question actually, was so you're saying that the decibel level measurement takes place at the source, not where it's being received at the end.
Sorry, it is at where it's being received.
Oh, it is?
Right.
In a residential area?
Right. Those limits are applied at the windows of the residential development and at the amenity areas at grade.
Okay. Thank you. No questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, does committee have questions of staff regarding any of these addresses? All right. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the last delegation for 83 Elmsdale, on their request as they try to work out with the region on the noise study, a potential deferral. Just wanted to get our staff opinion on that request.
Okay, that sounds good. Mr. Sloan.
Through the chair, this is fairly new information that's come up since our package was put out there. The region has been involved as they do have more of the authority and the mandate for that. We have not heard directly from the region today. We understand the delegate has met with the region today, so this to me is secondhand information. However, from a previous conversation with them, we know they're amenable to working it through with the delegate and figure out what's appropriate for the site. So I think on that basis, we would be okay if committee was to recommend deferring just the application of the new holding provision for 83 Elmsdale, at least until I'd suggest the May council meeting, so that we can have enough time to come to more of a decision on what the appropriate wording might be.
So May council meeting, then you are saying on May 13th? That be satisfactory? That's special council.
Through the chair, that would be acceptable from the staff standpoint if it was to be referred to that. May 13th committee, and we've got May 27th council.
So,
Are you suggesting that it be come directly to a council meeting?
I think to the chair and perhaps the committee administrator, we may have to work through today subsequent delegations and other matters that may or may not be within, we'll call it a bucket of things that may be referred or deferred by a certain time frame.
perhaps we can generalize and say that staff will work with the administrator for a May meeting.
Yes.
Referral to a May meeting.
For a May meeting.
Yes.
That sounds good. For an application, a deferral of the application of the new holding provision
That's correct, yes.
at 83 Elmsdale. Okay. So, but we'll need to vote on that. So let's wait for all the questions, then we'll come back to voting on that, okay? All right. Is that all your questions? I had another one. Okay. If I saw time. Yep.
Yeah, just staff's comment on the delegation for the Schlegel group as to the impact of the mixed use in the Rosenberg neighborhood. On the concern that they've laid out, is that any issue to staff to consider differently?
Through the chair, I think the way that we'll try and do this is we have Sarah and Richard here, and so we're prepared for whichever property. So one of the three of us may speak, and we also have some visuals if needed. The question that's specific to the Schlegel's land within the Rosenberg secondary plan, we are of the opinion that those lands are not before council today for consideration. We have talked to them, as was mentioned by the delegation in the past. They are looking at the overall mixed zone when it's created. What we've indicated to them is that in the Rosenberg secondary plan, there are very specific directions and policies, and it's a little bit different. It's kind of a special context to that area. So when we get to implementing the zoning, we will work with all the landowners to make sure it reflects what the secondary plan allows. So the base zoning that council is considering right now may be modified slightly with some site-specific provisions. So they may not get the blank.
Exists.
Yeah, it totally does, and we haven't even set a time frame on when we're doing that, so they can proceed with their zoning that they have now.
So it seemed as if their assessment was that the current recommendation is quite prescribed, but that's not the case. You're saying that there would still be some leeway as to the ultimate desired, the way they want to build it out.
Yeah, through the chair, the city planning approach is we have a mixed-use category citywide for the official plan, and we have several zones citywide for mixed use. There's a lower scale neighborhood one, there's ones that are in corridors or nodes, more transit areas, and there's one maybe for major transit near downtown. It's a zone that will apply to hundreds and hundreds of properties, and so each community, each transit node, each corridor might have specific provisions that are a little bit different, so you have to modify the base zone. What we're trying to establish now is the base starting point zone, and so when we do get to Rosenberg, or when we look at other locations and neighborhoods in the future, there is an opportunity to make it more special to that special area.
Okay, perfect. That helps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to give staff an opportunity to go through what's been said and kind of give us the context around. Not too long, I only have 5 minutes, but I'm basically giving my 5 minutes to you to kind of give us a brief on, you know, what all the delegations have said and your response to that.
Thank you, and you don't need to use up your 5 minutes. That's if you have follow-up questions, that's fine. So if we can start with, I take it you've noted each address and each delegation's comments.
We have, and through the chair, we agree. We wouldn't want to use the 5 minutes just for that. I think it's okay if we can summarize for everybody.
Okay.
So we'll
I appreciate
be
that.
as brief as possible, and then if there's still questions, and then if we need to revisit if there is any motions. So Richard and Sarah will help us with responding to them. So we'll go from first delegation. We thank Mr. Britton for being here and support. Second delegation.
So the second delegation we heard from was those 3 properties on Highland. If you refer to staff report page 18, that's where you can see a summary of our correspondence that we had with the delegation and what changes we made from the final draft to the final that we have here today. To summarize, staff is not in support of the requested change to have all 3 properties zoned and designated commercial. We note that we did make several changes to address their concerns within the framework of still conforming to the official plan and maintaining its objectives. These major changes were changing the designation and zoning of 2 of the properties, which the delegation noted. However, we maintain that the property located at 491 Highland should remain as mixed use. And the reason for this is to maintain the key principle that lands at the intersection of transit corridors should remain zoned and designated to achieve transit and pedestrian-oriented built form through the mixed-use land use. So that's kind of our position on that one. If there's any further questions,
we're going to pause for each one now if there are follow-up questions based on your response. Okay, so if you can keep your mic on. Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Thank you. Is there an opportunity then for the company to be able to petition to ask for a change to that, or this is set in stone?
Through the chair, this was staff's position to maintain the zoning. However, the decision, this is what we're recommending. Should you want to choose a different direction, that would be something that this committee consider.
That is something that's what I'm sorry?
That this committee could consider. However, staff is recommending that this be the zone that's
okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next, if you can speak to the Lot 42 site.
Through the chair, I was just confirming that yes, the delegation had provided some information as part of the process, so we have heard from them before. My understanding is that some of the uses that are being proposed were kind of caught in a bit of a situation in that a lot of the provincial direction has been to really lock down and preserve our employment lands. And so with the old zoning from decades ago, it was pretty wide open. And that's why, to focus our objectives on this, there are some uses that would no longer be permitted. They're a little bit more in the commercial side of things for industrial zones like this property. And by the nature of it, what's been considered and kind of talked about before is that it may constitute a conversion. And so with this type of matter, what we've suggested and would still suggest is that this property and any other future changes to the land use be identified for the region of Waterloo to consider in their employment lands and regional official plan review process that they've just started. And once that's complete, then the city is obligated to bring a conformity amendment at the end of that exercise to the land use to update the official plan and the zoning. So we think that ideally that would be the best place to identify these additional uses, move forward with the zoning as we have it. As noted by the delegation, it puts them in a legal non-conforming status for a little bit, and that's what we've been maintaining, and I think we're still at that same position.
Okay, thank you. Next, 353 Manitou Drive. You don't have, I mean, I just want to, I'm not asking for you to tell us more than, what is your position on it, or any response to the conversation so far.
Through the chair, this would be a similar response as Brandon just provided. These lands are also protected for industrial employment, and we would like to retain that as such, and they would get legal non-conforming status.
Okay, thank you. Then the Schlegel properties, they had 4 main points. We can move to another one and then get back to that one if you want to. No, you ready? Okay.
Through the chair, a couple of main points raised, the first being parking maximums. So just as a general comment, parking maximums would be where there's uses provided on a site. There's a maximum number of parking spaces that can be provided through the development process. This is a new regulation that's in the zoning bylaw. And the principle behind this generally is to cap parking on a site. There was a parking study that was done to inform the contents of the new zoning bylaw, and through this study it was found that generally there's an oversupply of parking in the city of Kitchener. Between 30 and 40% is the oversupply. One of the regulations we've included in the new zoning bylaw, in cases like the Williamsburg site that the delegates referred to, where the existing number of parking spaces on the site may be larger or more than the proposed maximums, we are legalizing the number of existing spaces on that site, meaning that a new building added there could continue to utilize the number of existing spaces, even if that number may be beyond what's allowed in the zoning bylaw. The second comment raised was on the topic of electric vehicle parking. This is something that was added to the new zoning bylaw prior to last year's April 2018 statutory public meeting. This was due in part to complement changes to the building code, which also require some electric vehicle parking. In last year's draft for commercial sites, the requirement was that of all outdoor parking spaces, that 20% of them include a charging station. We've had some dialogue with the Schlegels over the last year, and following last year's meeting and the comments we've received, we have made some adjustments to the electric vehicle parking. Now we are asking that only 5% include a charging station, and 15% will be what we call EV ready. So that means that the conduit is in place underneath the surface parking lot. Another comment raised by Mr. Pigeon was that for smaller sites like convenience retail, why are we asking for electric vehicle parking spaces for those smaller ones? So we have also added, following our conversation with the delegates, a new regulation that the requirement for the charging station only kicks in where there's 20 or more parking spaces required, which means that it would be a fairly large-scale use that would require it anyway. And lastly, there was the general commentary on some of the design regulations that we've included in the mixed-use zones. So generally speaking, just for committee's information, there are some more design-oriented regulations we've included in the final zoning bylaw. These are focused in priority areas, mostly in the downtown and in the mixed-use zones. The design regulations in the mixed-use zones, for the most part, are less restrictive than those in the downtown, but they are included nonetheless. Following several meetings and some commentary with the delegates over the last year, we have made some adjustments to the design regulations in the mixed-use zones. Staff would be happy to get into more specifics, though as Mr. Pigeon did not raise any specific regulations, we can keep it as general commentary for now that we have made some additional changes to how we approach the design regulations in the mixed-use zones.
Okay. Thank you. 2 more to go. So the block bordered by Queen, Weber, Frederick, and Duke. we had a delegate. Are there any staff responses to that?
So through the chair, I think the other one we had was 83 Elmsdale. I think we've addressed that one. So this could be the last one, and maybe
that's right.
To be brief, we appreciate the question to delegation because to us this is brand new information. We haven't had a letter or information or application on the lands that were referred to over the last 4 years of working on this. But this does happen. It is advertised as a statutory public meeting today. I would suggest that since it is new and there are some directions and positions from staff, the zoning bylaw does have to conform to the official plan, which is in effect and has a floor space ratio maximum of 3 plus bonusing ability, and the new bylaw does conform to that. However, with some of the items that were raised, it would be prudent and helpful if we could at least have a conversation with the delegation. And so I'd suggest that staff would be okay if those properties were also referred to the May meeting for a decision, if we could move forward with the rest, but hold these ones so we can have that conversation.
Okay, great. So do we have a mover for any deferrals? Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, actually, I just wanted to get a clarification on the recommendation on the third paragraph that says that stage 1 of the new zoning bylaw does not represent a comprehensive full replacement of the existing zoning bylaws, and therefore the moratorium clause of Section 34 of the Planning Act does not apply, thereby permitting amendments and minor variance applications. Are you still going to be open to that?
Through the chair, yes, it's staff position that we would like all 3 of these recommendations to move forward, but we recognize there may be some property-specific items that we may need more time for council to consider, or staff. The third one, I think, can move forward. It's actually staff's position. Technically, we think we don't need it, and we've consulted with our legal staff. This is not a full comprehensive change. However, this does provide some certainty for the development industry and for consultants to know that even if you pass this bylaw, they can still make an application. And I think that's what we're hearing today is there's a lot of property-specific interest for future things. Nothing here stops them from making an application in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so actually we need a mover for the recommendation that's before us. Okay. No, for the recommendation generally, we don't have a mover yet. So, but now we have Councillor Johnston. And do you have a deferral, Councillor Singh?
Well, no, that's part of the.
I'm sorry.
That's part of the recommendation. I'm assuming the Elmsdale and for Duke Street, they're both as part of the recommendation.
Point of order, Councillor Galloway Sealock. Oh, sorry, we have too many. I'm going to just take staff off here. Councillor Galloway Sealock.
Yeah, are you intending for us to take a vote on the entire motion at this point?
Yes.
I feel strongly uncomfortable with that, having not heard from the second delegation.
Oh, sorry, that's true, that's true.
Yes.
So, that's a really good point, and I appreciate that. So what we're going to do is we're not going to vote on that, but I don't know procedurally, Madam Clerk, how we proceed with a deferral before we proceed with actually moving the motion.
What? We are moving it. We're coming back.
We're going to wait for part 2, and then, but we have the delegates here today regarding this one. Okay. It has to be specific May meeting. Do you have a May date that you recommend? Okay. So Councillor Johnston, are you okay then with making your deferral for 83 Elmsdale and the block bordered by Queen, Frederick, Weber, and Duke to the May 13th meeting?
Yes, but my understanding...
Please put your mic on. Hold on.
Yes, thank you. My understanding is that because of the third paragraph, anyone can also still ask for a change, correct?
Correct.
We don't have to put in the exact addresses. Then yes, I am fine with that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, clear as mud. So, for the delegates who came before us this afternoon, I thank you very much for your comments, and we will continue this meeting after the next special council meeting. And the second part, as you know, is scheduled for 7 p.m., but staff will be back in touch with you before the May 13th meeting to make sure that, back in touch, I guess, before the next council meeting to address any further comments, to make sure that everybody's clear about the recommendation that's coming before us at council on April the 29th. Are there any final questions or comments? Okay, thank you. And that concludes part one of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting. Thank you, everybody. Okay. So we'll have a 5-minute recess and we'll reconvene for special council in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yo, you might not. Others may.